Sorry, first time doing this, so I'll try not to be that flustered anymore. Teresa, can we have a roll call, please?
Alderman Green.
Here.
Alderman Wallach.
Here.
Alderman Statter.
Here.
Alderman Charbonneau.
Here.
Alderman Mabee.
Here.
Alderman Boston.
Here.
Alderman Anderson.
Here.
Alderman Minor.
Excused.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes. We are going to start with the May 5th, 2015 special meeting. Do I have any corrections or changes? I see no lights. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. Next is approval of the meeting minutes for May 12th, 2015 for the regular Board of Aldermen meeting. Do we have any corrections or changes?
I had previously emailed Helen about 2 typographical errors. I believe the entire board was CC'd on those. A spacing error on page 3, and I believe an inadvertent inclusion of a word on page 10. And with those 2 changes, I would move that the minutes be approved.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving these meetings as amended, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. Next we have the meeting minutes for the May 12th, 2015 special meeting. Do we have any corrections or changes? I see no lights. Can I have a motion and a second to approve?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. And finally, the meeting minutes for May 19 special meeting minutes. Do we have any corrections or changes? I see no lights. May I have a motion and a second to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Meeting minutes are approved. Next up, we have public hearings. We do have a public hearing this evening for the 2016 Community Development Block Grant. Do we have someone here from St. Louis County to speak on that? Would you like to come up to the podium? Please state your name, address, and title for us, if you would.
Hello, my name is Catherine Mayrose. I'm with the St. Louis County Office of Community Development. The address is 41 South Central, Missouri 63105, and my title is Community Development Specialist.
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Mayrose, or do you have anything you would just like to discuss with the grant?
Well, I just came to this assignment. I've been with St. Louis County for 2 years, but I've been working up in North County, so I'll be your community development specialist who helps you administer your community development block grant funds from now on. Those are federal funds. They come from HUD. They're granted to St. Louis County. We get about $4.5 million a year, and then we sub-grant them to the municipalities in St. Louis County to undertake community development activities that are supposed to benefit low and moderate income people or eliminate slums and blight. So that's the purpose of the funds. And Crestwood currently receives about $23,400 a year in community development block grant funds. And my understanding is the purpose of the hearing tonight is for you to discuss how you're going to allocate your 2016 funds, which will not be here until next year, probably August of 2016, but we have to start early with the planning process, so that's why we're talking about 2016 tonight. And you also have some current funding that's currently allocated to the home improvement program. So that's really about it, unless anyone has any questions.
Alderman Wallace.
Yeah, thank you again for coming tonight. As in past years, there was like a waiting list. Is there still a waiting list for some of the residents?
There is a waiting list. As of right now, the money that's left in 2014 funds is all committed, and I'm told that there are about 35 people on the waiting list.
Okay. It looks like the maximum allotment is $5,000 per individual, is that correct?
Per homeowner, yes. It's a $5,000 forgivable loan, and it is capped at $5,000 per homeowner, yes. And it's a one time per homeowner and one time per address. So if the person moves, they can't do the program again, and that house that they moved from can't do the program again.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? Ms. Harris?
My question may be for city staff. The memorandum we were given really seems to provide two options, either continuing with the homeowner loan program or perhaps allocating the funds to American with Disabilities Act improvement to various city facilities. And I didn't know if there were a list of projects that the city contemplated that would provide better disability access, or if you could go into more specificity as far as the options we're looking at.
The main project that we're looking at for the ADA projects is to put ADA access to the front entrance of the city council building here. We have just started preliminarily looking at that. We wanted to wait and see how the board would look at that before we made any extensive efforts into that. But the information we do have on that is that would probably take the funds for 2016. We would hold those over and also use the funds for 2017 to make an ADA access to the front of this building.
And that would, I assume, involve a ramp and perhaps automatic doors as well?
We're not sure yet, because we just started looking at a ramp to meet the ADA requirements. Probably would not fit for one straight ramp, but there might be some sort of lift put in. But we're trying to figure something out.
Anything else on the ladies?
I don't think so.
Actually, I have a question as well. I understand that the funds that we get are right around $23,400, that the loan can be up to $5,000, but on average per year, how many citizens do we approve a grant to here in Crestwood? Do you have any idea?
Well, assuming that the cap is the 5,000, typically you would plan on assisting 4 residents per year. However, it is variable. Like we said, it's possible that one client wouldn't use that entire 5,000, and at that point you might end up with a little bit of extra at the end. But I don't have any specific data as to if there's currently any kind of remainder, or if that's, I wouldn't know obviously how that's going to go in the future.
That's fine. I was trying to get a feel for if we're helping 11 people that are asking for $2,000 each, or if everybody always tends to come in and ask for the full allocated amount.
I can tell you that the most common types of repairs that happen through the home improvement program are new roofs and new plumbing, HVAC, and electrical systems, and those are often pretty pricey. So my guess would be that the majority of people use close to the 5,000, if not about all of it.
Thank you very much.
And I would also add too that if you are planning to do an ADA project that would use 2016 and 2017 funding, that would be acceptable. Just so you know, though, our office has a policy that you can't hold on to more than 2 years of funding at one time. So you would really want to make sure that you were ready to go with that ADA project when the 2017 funds arrive, just so that you weren't potentially banking funds. That's because we are accountable to HUD for getting the money spent, and if everybody held on to their funds for multiple years, then we
$23,400 for quite a while. Who determined that dollar amount? Do we know?
That dollar amount was calculated after the 2000 census, and it was based partially on the population size of the city and partially on the amount of need at that time based on the census data with population and income. We do have the 2010 census data tabulated, but we have not yet begun assessing whether we need to remake those allocations. At some point, of course, they will be pretty out of date and they'll need to be redone, but that's not something we've looked at the current time.
Okay. So, we have people on the waiting list, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So I don't think, as much as the ADA project here is a great idea, I'm not sure you don't change this program around until you complete the waiting list.
That is up to the city. Yeah, I mean, if you have a waiting list, that indicates that there is a substantial need for the home improvement program in your community. So I would think that would be something that you would want to take into consideration. It is possible to go kind of in and out of the home improvement program, so to speak. I mean, if you wanted to, some cities will put their funds into the home improvement program for several years, and then maybe one year they won't, and they'll do a different project, and then the next year they go back into home improvement. And if you do that, the waiting list would just hold. It would still be there when you got back. So for what that's worth.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Charbonneau?
Yeah, I have two questions actually. One would be how often are the loans actually forgiven? And then is this quite common that people, cities will use the funds for other projects and keep people on the waiting list?
So to your first question, the homeowner has to actually, there's an intake process that it certifies that the homeowner is income eligible and that they do reside at the house and own the house and that they're current on their taxes, their property taxes. And then the loan is granted in $5,000 and then it's forgiven at a rate of 20% per year for 5 years. So they have to live there for 5 years in order for the loan to be 100% forgiven. But if they sell the property sooner, it would be prorated and they would need to pay back the amount of the loan that's left. Or if a person, passes away and their heirs inherit the property. I shouldn't speak to that because I don't know. I thought that they said that the loan is still prorated, but I'm not positive about that. And, I'm sorry, what was your other question?
Oh, well, actually, it's a follow-up question with that. So if an individual, let's say they move, so they then owe a certain percentage, does that money, what happens to that money when it goes to a fund? Then is there more money available for this type of loan for other communities, or does it go like to a general fund to come back out?
If I'm understanding right, so if they don't use all of their 5,000?
No, if the loan is not forgiven, so therefore the homeowner has to pay some money back. But does that money then just go back into a general? Because in theory, you're giving away money as long as someone stays at the home.
Right.
So if an individual pays money because they've moved, what happens to that additional funding then?
That's an excellent question. I really don't know. I don't think it happens too often because most people don't want to pay that money back. So I don't really know. I mean, I'd be happy to find out and get back to Helen or you or somebody. I don't know.
And then my other question was, how often do other cities do something similar with the money like this and use it for a project?
Right, so I would say home improvement or rehabilitation of private properties is kind of the technical title of the activity. That is the most popular activity nationally with CDBG, and I would say it's probably about half of the municipalities participate in the home improvement program, whether they do it sporadically or whether they do it every year. So it's pretty popular.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Maybe.
I think Alderman Breeding actually asked my question. I was curious what we could expect for future years with the funding, but I think that question's already been addressed.
All right. I have no other lights, so thank you very much. And do we have anyone from the audience that has questions or would like to ask about the community block grant? All right, then thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Any other discussion amongst the board as to whether we would want to keep these funds for the home improvement project? Alderman Wallach?
Yeah, I'd like to move to allocate the funds of $23,400 to the home improvement program.
We did have one other light, so before we ask for a second, Alderman Anderson.
Yeah, I would second that motion, but my comment was to the extent that we've been using the funds for the home improvement program for a while, and I think we should at least give some notice if we were going to change that and indicate maybe a preference in a year or two that we would be willing to do that. But I think at this point, given the size of the waiting list, it would be appropriate to continue to fund the money that way.
Thank you. Before we take a vote on this, I first need a motion and a second to close this public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Alderman Wallach, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to move for the 2016 that funding of $23,400 be allocated towards the home improvement program.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to reports, presentations, communications, and appointments. First item is reappointments to various city boards, commissions, and committees. Mayor Roby put forth the following individuals to be reappointed to their respective boards and commissions upon which they currently serve. Thomas Swink, Fire Board; Colin Meadows, Economic Development Commission; Dave Wall, Planning and Zoning Commission; Armin Gazarian, Park Board; Rich Bland, Police Board; and Matthew Kohler, Fire Board. We would like to appoint all of these as a group. If I could have a motion and a second to approve the above appointments.
So moved.
Have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Passes. Thank you, gentlemen. Next we have RFP for HVAC services. Mr. Gillum, would you like to speak on this issue?
This request for proposals is in part due to the fact that we have so many projects at the community center for the HVAC system. When you look at the capital project list, items number 1, 16, and 25 are at the community center for the HVAC system. Much of that system is original to the facility, which was built back in the 70s. And we'd like to approach this in a comprehensive type plan so that we can put together a replacement of all the different pieces and parts of the system within the next 2 to 5 years. And also, I did go on a tour of the entire Sappington House complex a couple months ago, and there was concern of the facilities over there as well. So I wanted to make sure that I included that also so that we could proactively replace units over there.
Any questions or discussion on this topic? Alderman Wallach?
Yeah, thanks for bringing this forward tonight. Again, just looking at the capital improvement projects, those items that you listed, 16 and 25, those are around $200,000 cost to the city projected, or in excess of that. So it does make sense to have a professional reviewer to lead us and consult with us. But in regards to the funding mechanism of the consultant, is that for the fiscal year 2015 budget or for the fiscal year 2016 budget?
That'll be for the 2015 budget.
Okay. did we already allocate a certain dollar amount for the professional?
I was going to use the capital improvement funds for that because it involves all the projects that we want to do on capital improvements.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're comfortable with that. It's usually when we use a professional, it's usually from a general fund, but I just want to make sure we're accurate in applying the funds for the consultant, although it's a capital improvement project, for the capital improvement funding. And Mark, is that appropriate that we use the funding towards capital improvement?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And is that allocation then towards, again, we allocated, I think, $200,000 funding for capital improvement projects for buildings for 2015. Is that where the funding is coming from?
It'll come out of that same line item that we have available.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Alderman Maybe?
On the, with respect to the Sappington House property, is it all 3 buildings being included? And if you could give a breakdown, which of those units are residential and which are commercial? I mean, I haven't looked at the HVAC on the site, but my assumption would be the restaurant portion has some kind of commercial service, whereas the 2 residential structures have more residential HVAC components.
That is correct.
Okay, so is the consultant needed only for the restaurant portion, or are we having them also look at the, I guess, more residential grade units on those 2 houses?
I'm going to have them look at all units over there.
Okay.
Anyone else? Alderman Anderson?
Yes, I had a question. Later on in the agenda tonight, there's a request for an air conditioning unit replacement at the Wycliffe Center for the Dance Studio. I was just trying to get a feel for the unit that we may be talking about. Would that be, in your opinion, compatible with an overall plan of replacement that this might envision, this scope of work for the expert?
I would say it would be a compatible replacement unit for the overall plan.
Do we need to indicate something in the RFP that they would take advantage or use that system, or that it would be compatible? I need to spend the money for that, and then 2 years from now we would be taking it out.
We would make that part of the discussion during the on-site pre-bid meeting.
Okay.
Is that all, Alderman Anderson?
Yes.
All right, I see no additional lights, so we will move on to the next item in the agenda, which is the report of bills payable for April 2015. Mr. Stein?
Okay, the bills payable have been sent to the aldermen, and they will be put onto the website tomorrow.
Next up is public comment. Because of time constraints, you may be asked to limit the time of your comments. Do I have anyone on this side of the room that would like to speak? Mr. Meader, if I could start. Please give your name and address at the podium if you wouldn't mind, sir.
Steve Nieder, 9131 Cherrybrook Lane. 2 questions, I guess 2 questions and a comment. You didn't open it up for public comment on your previous subject with the RFP, so I wanted to ask a question about that. The Sappington House was included in this RFP, and as I understand it from a question to Mr. Gilliam, he was including the residential part as well as the quote-unquote restaurant part. That's correct?
That is correct.
I can hear you.
That is correct. I wanted to include the entire complex.
Okay. Is it also true that the Sappington House Foundation is responsible for a great part of that maintenance and upkeep? They have their own funding? And if so, are we going to ask for them to participate in this venture for their portion of that cost?
The foundation is responsible for some costs down there. I don't feel like those specific costs are ironed out, and that'll be something that it's on my agenda to address with them, and I'll have to do that as time permits.
As time permits?
Yes,
So you may or may not do it, is what you're saying?
that means I will do it. It is on my agenda. It is one of my initiatives,
Okay.
and I will do it as time permits me to do
Okay.
that.
All right, thank you. Other comment I had, or question I had, is I noticed on, and since you're not Mayor Roby, I can't ask Mayor Roby. Maybe you can ask him for me. I noticed in our legal bills that there's been considerable activity again, questioning, my name was not exactly asked, but might as well say it was inferred, regarding the possibility of, I guess, what legal courses do you have to remove me again, or attempt to remove me again from the Planning and Zoning Commission? Why do you continue to spend taxpayer dollars on that particular venture? Is it that important to you to single out your opponents and the opposites of your opinions, to eliminate them? That's my question. Thank you.
Anyone else from this side of the room? Please state your name and address.
My information also people having the human report. Correct me if I'm wrong. The city owns the barn. The Sappington House Foundation owns the rest of the property out there. Am I right or wrong?
The city owns all properties. The city owns the whole property down there.
Even though it goes, some of it goes under the Sappington House Foundation, the city owns, the city has complete title to all of that, correct? No. Thank you. It was here.
Nope, I don't.
Come on. Please state your name and address.
Martha Duchild, 9158 General Grant Lane. My first comment, because I don't know, based on the public comment section, whether we're allowed to comment on agenda items as they come up or not. So, but actually this was for the RFP for HVAC services, and I'm following up with Alderman Wallach. I agree. I believe there is a sub-account for professional services under the Public Works account in the budget. And I agree that any professional services should be done under that sub-account and not under capital improvement. That's that. Also, the rest of my comment is on the public comment itself. From week to week, the public comment section has changed, and we don't know from one meeting to the next how it is handled. I want to remark on an entry in the legal bill from April, and perhaps ask the city attorney for clarification, from April 7th. Says review Crestwood Code and Charter regarding public comment at board meetings. Review and analyze materials regarding restricting public comment at public meetings at a cost of $72. What were you being asked to do? I see here regarding restricting public comment. Was the goal on how to restrict public comment?
No, that was not the goal. And, you know, that's probably just a general term that I'll have to be more careful in writing my time. But the restrict, what I was asked to do and what I looked at was what happened a few weeks ago when the mayor tried for his trial. You'll recall, I don't know if you were here at that meeting, but
I read.
right. So I looked at some of the issues related to that.
Okay. Well, I would say it is a poor word choice, as it leaves the impression
Well, I apologize.
that, and it wasn't your entry, it was actually Emily Slayton.
Yeah, but I look at it, so I will.
Okay. And with respect to that, with respect to the mayor changing the rule and doing his experiment, I would like to remind the board, under the charter section 3.1A, meetings. All meetings of the Board of Aldermen shall be public meetings at which the Board of Aldermen shall provide for public comments, unless public access has been restricted pursuant to law. Section 310C, rules and order of business. The Board of Aldermen shall by ordinance determine its own rules and order of business. Section 310F, procedure. Persons interested in a proposed ordinance shall be given an opportunity to be heard before the Board of Aldermen in accordance with such rules and regulations as the Board of Aldermen may adopt. In February 2004, the Board of Aldermen did adopt rules for public comment. To quote, discussion ensued and consensus of the board was to allow acting Mayor Richard Breeding to control the taking of public comment in regard to issues as the issues are discussed by the board. For the mayor, Article Section 4.4A, powers and duties, Board of Aldermen meetings. The mayor shall preside at the meetings of the Board of Aldermen, but shall not vote on any question except in the case of a tie. When the mayor tried his experiment with public comment a few weeks ago, he infringed on an authority that the city charter gives exclusively to the Board of Aldermen. It is a point of pride for the city that citizens are allowed to comment as agenda items are considered. And in 2004, it was the conclusion of the aldermen and the rest of the board that the legislative process works most efficiently when the public is allowed to address the board as each agenda item is considered, so that any input from the floor can be given after debate, but in advance of a vote. There is no way for anyone in the audience to anticipate what discussion will take place as the board deliberates an agenda item, so making comments ahead of the debate defeats the purpose of enabling the board to make an informed vote. And I could cite numerous examples where speakers have come before the board, have withheld information, or if there were information that needed to be clarified, that had the policy adopted by the mayor been enforced, people from the floor would not have had an opportunity to correct until 2 weeks later, and that's not an efficient way to run a meeting. So I now ask that the board restore the public comment as it was lawfully adopted and practiced since 2004. The lawfully established rules provide that the public can comment on agenda items at the time they are discussed. So I ask if the board can assert its own authority and restore public comment as it has been practiced since 2004. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else at this side of the room?
Go ahead.
Oh. Please state your name and address.
Bill Shalinsky, 600 Sessions Avenue. I just kind of I came to like an aha moment. I had occasion to be up in the far south suburbs of Chicago earlier or later last week into this weekend, and was traveling between an area, 159th Street and Cicero Avenue, which is on the west end of 159th Street, which runs for miles. It would be like Route 6 was probably, or I'm sorry, Route 66 was at one time. It's called Route 6 up there. All the way down to 88th Avenue and 159th Street, going through Oak Forest on one end, Tinley Park in the middle, and then Orland Park on the end. And I hadn't been up there for quite some time, so I was pretty amazed at the amount of building that has gone on, new building that is going on, brand new car dealerships, not low-end cars, but the high-end cars dealerships. And having come from that area and having lived up there as long as I have, the land that I'm talking about was vacant for decades. Nobody touched it. So it got me to thinking, boy, what the heck is going on here that there's all of this development? And then comparing that to what we're trying to accomplish here with the mall property. And we discussed, we've heard, various discussions what should go in there, what should go there, what should go there, what should not, and that's not what I'm here to talk about. What I did realize, what I think I realized, is a couple things. One is that I understand, whether I agree with it or not is another thing, but I think I understand Urban Street's residential component to the development. And the reason that I understand that piece of it is because I do not think that given the population that is up there compared to down here, that you could have the kind of critical mass to support some of the things that we've heard talked about down here, big box stores, whether it be a Menards, a Home Depot, an IKEA, any of those things. So I drove down the road several times, different times during the day and night because I had to. But in driving it, I thought, boy, this is taking forever. And so I asked my wife today, I said, by the way, how long do you think that was from this point A to point B where we needed to go? She said, well, I figure about 12 miles. When I MapQuest today, it's 4.98 miles. But it took 45 minutes to drive that distance. Can you imagine down here driving that distance for 45 minutes? And it's because there are not just hundreds of cars that are traveling over that road, but thousands of cars during the day. And then there's the intersections, because it's on the grid system up there. So you're hitting all these major other thoroughfares going north and south, or cutting across an east and west road. But I think that is part of what brings that critical mass to that area. So I did some further looking. Between those towns, Oak Forest has 28,000 residents. Tinley Park has 57,000 residents. Orland Park has another 57,000 residents. So almost 142,000 residents just in the towns that stretch through that part of the road. I looked up Tinley Park because it was in the middle. And Tinley Park boasts, and you'll have to excuse me because my eyes are getting old as I am, that it has up to 4 million individuals within a 25-mile radius of Tinley Park to access that area. And what I'd like to be able to do, and I didn't, was draw a similar circle down here to see how far out would I have to go to capture 4 million people in that same area. The other thing that it said is that they have what they call access to a trade area of 600,000 people that are closer than that 25-mile radius. So what I want to bring to the point is that critical mass that I don't believe we have. I don't believe there's any way we could possibly get that to support any type of big box retail up here. There's one restaurant that's frequented up there. It's called Portillo's, and it's right on the corner of a busy intersection. And we went there for dinner one night. 26 cars in line on a Thursday night. No, not on a Friday night. 26 cars in line. And so I asked the person when I got inside, I said, how long does that last? All night. There were 4 people that were going up and down that 26-car line to take orders. I can't imagine anything like that, similar to that, anywhere around here. So again, I'm not saying that's bad for us. I'm just saying that critical mass that exists up there that can support that type of business that I don't believe we have. So that was my first thing. The other thing that I started thinking about was tax rates. And there's very few ways that the municipality has to raise revenues. One of them, of course, is through sales taxes, and we've been talking about the TIF options with the CIDs or the TDDs and the tax rates. Now, I did not compare the tax rate up there because it's Illinois, it's near Chicago, all that stuff. Illinois has been doing some crazy stuff with tax rates to plug their budget gaps. But down here, we had to go clothes shopping before we went up to Chicago in an emergency. And so we went to South County Mall. So we spent a couple $100 there. The tax rate at South County Mall is 7.1130%. If I were to go to Kohl's here, it would be 9.6%. So where do you think I'm going to do my shopping? Kirkwood Target is 8.3625%. West County Mall, 8.6130%. The Ace Hardware is 9.6130%. I called it Tuesday morning, this morning here in Crestwood. They're at 8.60%. But the woman offered, she said, we've had several people have been complaining about our tax rate here, saying it's too high. Well, I'm pretty used to that 8.6%, so it doesn't seem high to me, and I'm not sure we're where those customers are coming from. We shop at the Walgreens in Sunset Hills at Gravois in Sappington because the tax rate is 7.113%. And just as another thing, we went out to Bass Pro a few weeks ago, and out in St. Charles, it's 8.450%. So my point is when we have a limited amount of dollars to spend in our family, and taxes become a component of that purchasing decision, I'm going to go where I have to pay, where I can pay lower taxes. So when you're considering any of the tax increment financing options that we have, I would just offer that there's at least this family that is very sensitive to tax rates. And by sensitive, I mean we will make a decision based on what we buy and where we buy it. Because it's not, down here, it's not a hard thing to get on Sappington Road and be in another town and pay less of a tax. So I wanted to comment on that to you. It was just one of those aha moments, and I could be wrong, but I think that's part of it. I also want to comment on something that I've been trying to talk about and get something done with for some time, and that is the residents next to my house.
I'm not going to stop you, but
Okay,
I just want to make you aware that you've been up there about 8 minutes.
Okay, good, thanks. 604 Sessions Avenue was finally purchased. It was a home that was in foreclosure. However, there still has not been a lot of work done on it, and I wouldn't even say there was any work done on it. What has been done is that they have been removing cabinets and that type of stuff, but throwing it into the back room of the addition. I was out on my lawn on Sunday cutting the grass, and I don't know about you guys, but if when you're in your younger days, you had something that you ate and it made you sick, you probably didn't want to go near it again, you didn't like the smell of it, or maybe you had something to drink that you didn't like. For me, that's rum. So I don't even want to smell rum. So I'm out cutting the grass, and I'm smelling the mold, the mildew, whatever it is, wafting across over to me as I'm cutting the grass, and it makes me nauseous. And I've asked the city to do something about it. Somebody now owns the house. HUD does not. Somebody owns the house. I would ask that we do one of two things. One is that we contact the owner and we try to demand some date of completion to get any defects in that house corrected. We've been dealing with this for going on the 7th summer now that we've been having to deal with that house. The other is if they're not willing to do that, is that we begin condemnation proceedings on that house. Any contractor that has been through there, with the exception of the current owner's contractor, has said that that house needs to be torn down. So I'm not in favor of tearing it down and having blank space there, but I am in favor of us doing something. I can tell you the neighbors in our neighborhood are getting really tired of it. I haven't seen anybody over there other than the guys that tore out the cabinets, and I believe it's the owner that cuts the grass on a regular basis. But other than that, there's been no improvements to the property. Thank you.
State your name and address, please, sir.
Robert Miller, 8915 West Haven Court, 63126-2328. I'm confused here too, like one of the previous speakers here. Am I now to talk about things on the agenda or not? You know, it's, I don't know if we're under Robert's rules today. Well, they don't talk about it. Anyway, are we going to have another session where I can talk about things on the agenda while they're being discussed? That's, you know.
I think you can talk about anything on the agenda that
Thank
you'd like right now.
Thank you. All right. Yeah, I wanted to talk about this fireman contract here. To the board here, I don't know if you've read it or not, it's like a 39 or 40 page document. I certainly don't have time to read it all, but I did look at the index. Loss of seniority is discussed there, but nothing about seniority. I don't know why. I'd like to see that. I don't really see anything for seniority, but teachers are losing it real quick. But anyway, and then I see here section 2.17, mergers and consolidations, and then very similar, my same question, section 2.18, contracting out. I see both parties involved here, you, the management, Board of Aldermen, and then the union. Now, I really, you know, we see a big merger going on today between Charter and what?
Bright House.
Yeah, and I really doubt if Mr. Allen, who founded Charter Communication after getting out of Microsoft with Bill Gates, if he really asked all of these unions, he probably has 20 or 30 of them in the big organization, if we can do this or we can do that. So I really
hope that you look at how you're being locked into mergers and consolidations and contracting out. Okay. And then another question in that regard, here on page 20, we see here 10 different steps. Steps A through J, that's 10 different steps here, section 3.02 salaries. My question is, are these salaries locked in through 2018? This is a 3-year contract now, which I don't understand either. They're going to lock us in effective June 1 this year through May 31 of 2018. Are these salaries locked in for that period of time? No one knows? I don't know. I'm just asking. I guess maybe I'm hoping you're ready. And then the same thing, I guess, the end of this here, reopening clause. Nothing here can be reopened without the union's permission. Again, I don't know if Mr. Allen asked if he could merge or go whatever. The reopening clause, section 5.06, reopening clause. Okay? All right. And then I guess the other thing here, I hear so much about this TIF stuff. I read it in the newspapers. I read it digitally. We get too involved here. I want somebody to look up a contractor, a developer, not one of these Wall Street gangsters out of Chicago or New York like we were dealing with here back in 2006, 7, 8, 9, and 10. But this here group is about the same thing. They're developers, and then they have these $1 million contracts and venture capital. It's money for these people. It's taking the money away from us in the school district. But anyway, I know a developer in the city of St. Louis. I don't have time to look it up, but you maybe can look it up. He bought a tract of land, 209 or 210, when it was down at the bottom, and he got it for a steal, just like these people got this property over here for a steal, and now they're trying to steal more from the taxpayer. But anyway, that's beside the point. Check 1014 Locust. And he told me, if I can't develop this thing on my own money, I'm not going to take TIFs. Well, that's good. He's a good, honest man. But he's not a Wall Street gangster with millions of venture capital dollars behind him. All right? And let's forget about Rex Sinkfield. He's mentioning all this digital stuff, plutocrat or whatever. But, we don't hear about him donating $10 million to the University of Missouri. You don't hear that. But anyway, let's forget about Rex Sinkfield. He's for better education, which I'm for, and he's also for lower taxes, which I'm also for. So maybe I'm a loser in that respect. But anyway, thank you very much. And I hope to get some answers on this. I don't have time to come back.
Anyone else on this side of the room? Anyone on this side of the room? All right. Thank you very much. Move on to zoning board report. Have none? City administrators report and associated bills.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is a request for approval for a new annual liquor license and new managing officer for Pints and Rails. Pints and Rails has been repurchased by Daniel Manchanda, and he will be the managing officer and is requesting a full liquor license along with his state and county licenses. So he's now coming before the board for his city license.
Thank you. Do we have a petitioner here from Pints and Rails? Would like to approach the podium, please? State your name and address.
Daniel Manchanda, 5360 Gilson.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Manchanda? No? I see no lights. So, we have a motion to approve. A second? Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you. Ask a quick question.
Certainly.
Do we ask for a letter of intent here, or do we come back later and we can ask you about it?
I don't think you have to come back. I think you need to contact the city clerk
Okay, I'll just
and talk to her and ask her explain what you need, and she'll contact whoever else she needs to, but I think it'll be done with the board.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
The next item is an ordinance approving a contract between the City of Crestwood and CNR Mechanical Company for the repair to the air conditioning unit at the dance studio at White Cliff Community Center. The air conditioning unit failed, and the city now would like to repair this unit and get it going again to keep the dance studio cool with the summer months coming up.
Any questions or comments from the board? Alderman Charbonneau?
Yeah, I have a question. I was just curious. Was preventative maintenance done on the air conditioner before the summer season, and were there any signs that this was going to happen, or just curious?
The technician did his annual maintenance on it and didn't find any issues with it. This is an original unit that is 37 years old.
No other lights. Do we have any comments or questions from the board?
Steve Meter, 9131 Cherrybrook Lane. Just a quick one. I couldn't find in the agenda or the PDF where we'd gone out for bids on this particular project. Did we go out for bids on this?
We got proposals only from our on-call service provider.
So you're saying we did not go out for bids, correct?
That is correct.
And I think that we're required on anything over $10,000 to go out for bids. Isn't that correct?
Except when the board approves an emergency purchase.
How can this be classified as an emergency?
We are trying to get this done before the weather gets real hot, and we're bringing it before the board, and if the board chooses to not approve this as an emergency purchase, then we will back up and go out for bids.
Okay, well, again, I don't see how this can be an emergency, number one. Number two, if we were to go out for bids, what would be your estimate in time to get that done? A week? 2?
We would have to put it out for bid for a minimum of 2 weeks. And we advertise that on the East-West Gateway, which we have to get to them by Wednesday evening, so it can be posted Thursday. We also post it on the Missouri Municipal League, and everything has to be posted. And we put it on our website. Everything has to be posted for a minimum of 2 weeks. And we'd also have a site visit as well.
Okay, and how long ago did this occur? This failure?
May 14th.
May 14th. Okay, so you could have already been doing this and had it almost completed by now if you had gone through the procedure, correct?
Depending on what part of the procedure you use.
Well, you're saying it took about 2 to 3 weeks to do it, so you could have already had this well underway and had it proposed for the next board, and we might have gotten a much more competitive bid than what we have right now.
It would not have been, it would still be out for bid right now.
I understand that, but it would have been much closer to completion if we'd gone ahead and, instead of calling this an emergency, which still hasn't been defined, but going ahead and doing the procedure as defined in our charter. Correct? We could have already been well underway and possibly ready for the next meeting.
I don't know that we would.
I'd like the city attorney to chime in on this as well.
We would have to put together specifications and a site meeting.
Well, the specifications are already done. We already know that. CNR gave you a bid right away. Apparently, they knew the specifications, so that's not an argument.
Well, it is. You have to put together a specification if you're going to have it bid out by multiple vendors.
Well, you already got a bid, so you already know what the specifications are. That's not an argument. But anyway.
Gentlemen, can we let the stump speak, please?
Let me just see if I can step back and clarify a little bit. The code does typically provide for bidding for this type of contract in this amount. The code also does provide an exception for emergency procurements where the procurement process can be waived. And the language that the code uses is it can be waived when a delay may threaten the basic mission of a department. Mr. Gillum has made, at least in his judgment, that those facts do exist, and that's what he's explained in your memo, I believe, to the board. Based on the timing, that he doesn't have the timing to comply with the procedures. So that's why it's coming to you as an emergency procurement, and it's up to the board to make the final decision. But your staff's recommending that there is not sufficient time and to proceed with it as an emergency.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have questions? Then can I have a motion for a first reading? Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
No, I do need them. All those opposed?
No.
Motion passes for the roll call.
Because now you just had a vote for the first reading. Oh.
Okay. Bill number?
1502.
Thank you. Pass this to Alderman Anderson, please.
Bill number 1502, an ordinance approving an emergency contract between the City of Crestwood, Missouri and CNR Mechanical Company for the repair to the air conditioning unit of the dance studio at the Wycliffe Community Center in Wycliffe Park, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute all necessary documents in connection with said contract on behalf of the city.
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Alderman Maybe.
Yes.
Alderman Charbonneau.
No.
Alderman Statter.
Yes.
Alderman Anderson.
No.
Alderman Boston.
Yes.
Alderman Wallach.
Yes.
Alderman Breeding.
Yes.
You have 5 yes, 2 nay.
Okay. So do we have a motion for second reading?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of second reading? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right.
Bill number 15-02, introduced by Alderman Anderson. An ordinance approving an emergency contract between the City of Crestwood, Missouri and CNR Mechanical Company for the repair to the air conditioning unit of the dance studio at Wycliffe Community Center in Wycliffe Park, and authorizing the mayor and the city clerk to execute all necessary documents in connection with said contract on behalf of the city.
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Alderman Boston.
Yes.
Alderman Anderson.
No.
Alderman Charbonneau.
No.
Alderman Wallach.
Yes.
Alderman Maybe.
Yes.
Alderman Breeding.
Yes.
Alderman Statter.
Yes.
5 yes, 2 no.
Thank you. Motion passes.
The next item on the agenda is an ordinance approving an agreement with Playhouse Productions and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute the same on behalf of the city. This is an agreement between the city and Playhouse Productions Incorporated, which was originally entered into to enable the Wycliffe Summer Playhouse program to be continued with minimal financial risk to the city and fewer city staff man-hours expended. The action recommended is that the mayor and board of aldermen consider and approve the agreement with Playhouse Productions in order to allow the city to continue to offer the White Cliff Summer Playhouse program in a way that most effectively serves the city.
Any questions or comments from the board? Alderman Anderson?
Thank you. In Section 2 of the agreement, it provides that the city will secure rights and royalties for all productions. Do we have any idea what the cost might be for those sorts of things?
The cost of the various productions depends on the production, which several different companies owns the rights, and what size of crowd oftentimes is estimated to be in attendance. Generally, the rights are anywhere from $500 to about $3,000. More often than not, they're under $1,000.
Okay. And when would the city be reimbursed for that? After the
production is over, because the big part of Playhouse Productions funding comes from the actual audience attendance and then the fees that they bring in from that.
Thank you.
Alderman Wallace?
Yeah, thank you. Just for clarity, it looks like this is a 3-year contract. Is the existing one a 3-year contract, or is this just what always been a 3-year contract?
The existing one has been in existence since Jeannie Kresge was the Parks and Recreation Director, and that takes us back into the 90s, late 90s, early 2000 area.
Okay. And this is for the Playhouse production plays, and how many plays typically are there during the summer?
For probably about the last 8 years or so, we have done at least 4 productions a summer with them.
All right. Kind of leading into Alderman Anderson's question or inquiry. Is there a profit that the city makes for these events?
There's not a profit so much as a non-loss. We pretty well break even with our expenses and what Playhouse Productions pays us out of their, they basically pay us 10% of the gate, and that covers what costs the city incurs. We kind of look at it the same as having a swim pool or a day camp, where it's more for the public benefit than a profit center. But at the same time, we don't want to be losing money on it, and that's why the original contract was drawn up, because we had a couple of seasons way back 20 some odd years ago where the city was ending up in the red, and instead of ceasing to do the productions, we started doing a contract with Playhouse Productions instead of actually doing it in-house, so that we were cut off from any possible losses.
Okay. And I think I also saw here for concession sales. That's actually staffed by Playhouse Productions as well as profits flowing to Playhouse Productions. Is that correct?
Yeah. At one point, the city did staff the concession stand that was over by the pool at the old swimming pool, and there was a split with Playhouse Productions at that point. At this point, they just have a very small concession stand outside of the community center where they sell snow cones and popcorn and soda and things like that. That other than the city requesting that they sell product that's the same as what we have the agreement with the soda vendor with, we have no other involvement for the most part.
Okay. And the last question is, for the insurance requirements, I know it's blank here in section number 20 of the contract. City shall be named disinsured, general liability, but it doesn't indicate the amount. Is it $1 million of the coverage that they're providing us with? the city attorney to look into that for us, or the $2 million, which we typically do see sometimes.
I do not have that with me. I believe it is all minimum of $1 million of liability. And I want to say, and I can't remember what part of it, but I believe one of the different liabilities goes up to $3 million.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Alderman Anderson?
Just to follow up, so there is a insurance policy in effect, or there was for last year at least?
Yes.
Okay. And I mean, does that run on an annual basis, or is that,
It's, the Playhouse Productions provides us with a certificate of insurance naming us as also insured, and has done for several years since we first asked them to be doing that.
Seeing no more lights, any comments or questions from the audience? I see none. I have a motion and a second for a first reading.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, aye, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Have a bill number?
1503.
Thank you. Pass that on to reading, please.
I would have one motion. I think Alderman Anderson and Alderman Wallach have both brought it up, and there is language in here that the certificate of insurance has to be acceptable to the city, but I do think it'd be appropriate to put a $1 million floor on the comprehensive insurance policy. So I would move that we amend Section 20 to include that requirement. And I'm sure it's been adhered to, but just to make it explicit.
Do you have a second to that?
Let's go ahead. Let's take the amendment. Did you second the amendment, Alderman Wallach? You did. Let's vote on the amendment.
Then we can come back to it.
Right.
All right. All those in favor of amending Section 20 as per Alderman Mady's suggestion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. May I have a motion and a second again to have a first reading?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Alderman Breeding?
Bill number 1503, introduced by Alderman Breeding, an ordinance approving an agreement with Playhouse Productions Incorporated and authorizing the mayor and the city clerk to execute same on behalf of the city.
Have a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Wallach.
Yes.
Alderman Statter.
Yes.
Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
Alderman Breeding.
Yes.
Alderman Charbonneau.
Yes.
Alderman Mady.
Yes.
Alderman Boston.
Yes.
Seven ayes, motion passes. May I have a motion and a second for a second reading?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Alderman Wall?
Thank you. Bill number 15-03, introduced by Alderman Breeding, an ordinance approving an agreement with Playhouse Production Incorporated and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute same on behalf of the city.
As amended.
As amended.
Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Charbonneau.
Yes.
Alderman Wallach.
Yes.
Alderman Mady.
Yes.
Alderman Boston. Alderman Statter.
Yes.
Alderman Breeding.
Yes.
Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
7 yes.
The next item on the agenda is an ordinance approving a MOU between the city and the fire union. As I have pulled that from the agenda for this evening due to more questions that have been raised between the firefighters and the city. The next item on the agenda is an ordinance amending section 17-20 city code for the city parks. This is to amend the opening and closing times for the parks. The The parks currently are open at 7 a.m. and close at 9 p.m. And the request is for the parks to open at 6 a.m. and close at 10 p.m. Throughout the year for all parks with the exception of White Cliff Park, which shall open at 5:30 a.m. and close at 11 p.m.
And I'm actually going to comment on this as well as the aldermanic representative to the park board. This was of discussion at the last park board meeting, and the reason that the new hours were decided upon was based heavily on the recommendation of our police department, who say that we don't have a lot of problems with the parks with the hours that we have now. We do have a lot of early morning joggers that like to go out and jog. They didn't see a problem with extending the hours, but found it was important that we do have posted hours so that they could enforce them as needed. The reason that the White Cliff hours are slightly different is to accommodate the hours that that property is actually in use. They're their early mornings for swim lessons. You wouldn't really want people coming for swim lessons before the park was actually deemed to be open. Alderman Mabee?
Just a question, I'm trying to picture in my head, I did not have a chance to drive by some of these parks. Are there going to be some signage changes as far as on the permanent signs by some of these parks? And if so, what kind of a cost were we looking at?
Todd, you speak to that?
Yes, we will be changing all the signs to reflect the new hours, and the cost will be minimal. I believe that signs like that there in the park are typically done in-house.
Okay, great.
Anyone else on the board? Questions? Comments? Alderman Reed?
Haven't been on the park board, and we discussed this. Is it possible to hear from Chief Marley regarding this issue? Go ahead. Because I'm not sure. I'm not sure the board should vote on this tonight to give our residents, a couple weeks to think it over, give us some feedback. But having discussed this at the park board, I just wanted to hear from you what the rationale was.
It's the park board made the decision to change the hours. It wasn't the police department. So the hour changes that they made are not going to change large-scale enforcement in the parks. So there was no big reason to object to the changes that they made.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Wallace?
Yeah, just a brief question. Some of these parks are in neighborhoods. Is there sufficient lighting? Do we have any concerns? The only reason why I mentioned that, Ferndale Park is right in front of my house. There's only one small light. And it hasn't been a problem at night. And actually, I appreciate opening up at 6 o'clock, because actually people frequent that at 6 o'clock and work out. So that's great. But my concerns are with the hours at 10 o'clock. That seems to be late. Some of these parks are in neighborhoods. I don't know if it's going to cause any disturbances or not. It does make good mention that from Alderman Breeding that we could wait to see if there's any concerns from the residents that live within the parks. But if I'm hearing this correctly, I recognize there's a sign actually in Ferndale Park that says it's open 7 o'clock to 9. But what I'm reading, though, our ordinance actually reflects 10 o'clock at night during the summer months, or at least for 8 of the month rather than 4. And I just want to make an observation on it. So again, I just have my concern. Again, if it's opening that late, I think does it impede us to make sure that there's a sufficient lighting there in the park for the residents to use that park.
Any comments or questions from the audience? Alderman Anderson?
I just wanted to indicate that The parks were open in the summer until 10 o'clock, and I don't live very far from Crestwood Park, and sometimes when I get home late at night, it's, sometimes I walk the dog, and so having it from 9 to 10 be open, there's a lot of people that do that. There hasn't been any issues, at least that I know of up at Crestwood. So to keep a uniform system throughout the year so there's no confusion, I would think maybe it would be okay to go to the 10 o'clock.
Just to clarify, if I could ask Chief Arley, assuming that we did change this from 9 o'clock at night until 10 o'clock at night at the residential parks, if somebody's out there making a ruckus and it's 9:30, I mean, what is allowable or not allowable during open hours versus closed hours? What would your officers be looking for?
I mean, if we're getting calls for service in the park, they're creating some sort of a disturbance. And because the park is open then, you're not allowed to create a disturbance for the neighborhood. So you would probably be asked to leave.
So you'd still have some recourse even if the park is open. Thank you. Anyone else? Comments? Certainly. Come on up. Mind stating your name and address?
Yes, my name was 8915 Preston Lane. I think it's a great idea actually that you would like to ask the residents what they think about it. I'm one of the park board members, and we have decided that to have a uniform hour throughout the year, but I think it's a great idea that you maybe wait a little bit, ask the residents what they think about it, just to see how they feel about those hours. I think they are great. We're going to spend some money with signage, stuff like this. We've got to to change them over the year, but yes, you should maybe wait a little bit, ask the residents what they think about it. Just want to say that.
Thank you. Does anyone want to make a motion to move this to a later meeting, or do we want to make a motion and second to do a first reading tonight?
Just a question.
Oh, certainly.
And I won't take up your time.
Can you please come up?
Yeah.
State your name and address.
Bill Shalinski, 600 Sessions Avenue. So I heard that we want the residents, to have some input to this. How does that happen? That's my only question. So we're all sitting here, we know about it, but how is everybody else going to know? There you go.
Well,
So that's just my comment.
sure. The recording goes up on the website. Meeting minutes are posted. Newspaper.
Word of mouth.
Alderman Charbonneau?
I was actually just going to make a motion that we table this until the next meeting, so we can, if residents, don't read about it or don't hear from us, at least that gives us a chance to talk to our neighbors and I live next to a park as well, and just to talk with those individuals and hear their responses to it.
Can I ask you a question? Do you have a problem with that park at all?
I live far enough away where I'm not next to it. However, there are several residential, homes literally up against that park. It's a line. That's correct. And just want to make sure that, there's definitely people out on the playground using the tennis court for things other than tennis. No one plays tennis there. But just to make sure that the residents in that particular area are fine with it.
Second.
Thank you. Before I ask for a vote, I also had a letter from Alderman Meeting.
I just had an inquiry was there any opposition to this at the park board meeting?
Not that I recall. There was a bit of discussion, but this is what everyone landed on.
Yeah, from back when I was in the park board, there was a lot of discussion, but we came to an agreement on it. But never once was there anyone besides the park board in attendance, so we gave our residents a couple weeks while we talked to them.
In theory, I'm actually all for it. However, I live far enough away from the park that unless the ruckus is extremely loud, it won't bother me. So.
Well, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
5 ayes and 2 nays, but do I need to? Can we do a roll call vote, please?
Alderman Waller.
Yes.
Alderman Boston.
Yes.
Alderman Breeding.
Yes.
Alderman Sherman.
Yes.
Alderman Anderson.
This is on the motion to table?
To push it out for one meeting.
No.
Alderman Maybe.
No.
Alderman Statter.
Yes.
5 yes, 2 no.
So motion passes. We will revisit this again at the next meeting.
The next item on the agenda is a report on the sewer lateral program.
Mr. Gillum, would you like to speak on this?